Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a book that takes a really critical look at a fear that seems to be everywhere these days, this idea that we're all becoming hopelessly addicted to the internet.
The book is called The Multiplicities of Internet Addiction by Nicola F. And its whole argument is hiding in plain sight, right there in the subtitle, The Misrecognition of Leisure and Learning. That's the key. It's suggesting that maybe, just maybe, we've been looking at this whole thing completely backwards.
All right, let's kick things off with a feeling that I bet is pretty familiar to all of us. It's that little bit of panic, that anxiety we get when we think about how much time we, and especially our kids, are spending online. You've seen the headlines, right? They're always so dramatic, painting this really scary picture of a new addiction that's taking over. And all that noise creates this widespread fear that if you're using the internet a lot, well, you must have a disorder.
And when we're all panicking, we start looking for easy answers. The book points out how you'll see some expert on TV telling parents, oh, just limit your kids' time on a game like Club Penguin to 3 hours a week. Like, that's it, problem solved. It's a nice, simple soundbite, but does it actually help?
So, this leads us to the book's first really big move. It says we need to slam on the brakes and ask a fundamental question. Are we even using the word addiction correctly here? What does that label truly mean?
The author argues that the media, and a lot of us, fall into this way of thinking called essentialism. It's basically a mental shortcut, where you paint everyone who does something with the same broad, problematic brush. So every single person who spends hours online gets labeled an addict, as if their experiences are all identical.
And this next point is absolutely crucial. The book draws a bright, bold line between dependence and addiction. Look, we are dependent on all sorts of things. Our cars to get to work, our phones, even a kettle for coffee. They're tools. But addiction, that's a compulsion, often with severe withdrawal, usually tied to a substance. They are not the same thing.
This is such a great way to frame it, isn't it? If we start applying that addiction logic to other things we rely on every day, it starts to sound a little, well, ridiculous. Are you addicted to your car just because you use it all the time? Of course not.
And the thing is, this isn't some settled science. Not even close. If you actually look at the experts, it's kind of all over the place. There are so many competing ideas about what internet addiction even is, from some saying it's as real as drug addiction to others saying it doesn't exist at all.
Okay, so we've put a big question mark on the label itself. Now let's get to the real heart of the book's argument. What if this isn't just about using the wrong word? What if we're completely misinterpreting what people are actually doing online?
I mean, think about the huge double standard the author points out here. If you spend hours just surfing the web, people call it wasting time. But if you spend those same hours doing a Sudoku puzzle, suddenly it's cerebral activity. Playing a game online all day is an obsession, but practicing the violin for that long, that's dedication. Why the difference?
Because it's all about perspective. What an outsider looks at and calls an addiction, the actual community of players sees in a totally different light. For them, it's about skill, it's about focus, determination, and building an expertise that is genuinely respected by their peers.
In fact, research suggests there's a much better term for this: high engagement. This is when you're pursuing something out of deep enjoyment and focus. And here's the critical difference. Unlike addiction, high engagement doesn't come with withdrawal. You do it because you love it, not because you're trying to avoid feeling awful. Right. So if it's not always this black or white addiction thing, then what is it? Well, this is where the book offers a really fascinating and honestly much more useful way to think about our online activities.
So instead of a simple on-off switch, check this out. The book lays out what it calls a continuum of dispositions. It's a spectrum, right? It starts with just a like, and it moves through habit and then obsession, with true destructive addiction being way over at the very far end.
And here's the real insight from this model. It suggests that most of what we casually label as internet addiction is actually happening somewhere in the middle of the spectrum. It might be a deep habit or maybe a temporary obsession that's actually fueling some intense learning, not that destructive state at the very end.
So you might be thinking, okay, we're just changing a word. Why does this matter so much? It might seem like it's all just semantics, but trust me, the book argues the implications here are huge.
It matters because when we just default to the addiction label, we are completely failing to see what might actually be happening. We could be looking at brand new, totally legitimate forms of leisure and learning that we just don't recognize yet because we're so blinded by our fear of the problem.
And there's another really serious side to this. When we casually joke, oh, I'm so addicted to this show, we're actually being incredibly dismissive of the real, life-shattering battle that people with actual chemical and substance addictions face every single day. It trivializes their fight.
And so, this all brings us to the book's big final point. We have to reframe how we see things. We need to look past the scary headlines and start asking if what we're seeing as a problem is actually the development of new skills, real expertise, and deep social connections.
And that really leaves us with a challenge, doesn't it? For all of us. The next time you hear that term internet addiction, or see someone totally absorbed in something online, maybe our first instinct shouldn't be to pathologize it. Maybe the first question we should ask is, what's really going on here? Is this a new kind of learning that we just haven't learned to see yet?